The 2017 World Baseball Classic, in my opinion, was an all-time tournament in the history of the competition. In that version of the Classic, the Americans would win their first ever championship, defeating Puerto Rico at Dodger Stadium to make history. In this video, I wanted to revisit the run that Team USA went on to get to the finish line. I will also be going through the rosters, coaching staff, and every single game, so this one is going to be longer than usual. Also, make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment your thoughts on the World Baseball Classic and what you want to see from the tournament in the future. Managing legend Jim Leyland was chosen by USA Baseball to lead the club and build the 2017 edition of the tournament roster. The following is what he came up with. Please note as well, many other players could have been added, but some players actually will decline the offer to play so they can prepare more for the MLB season. The tournament does take place during spring training. The pitching staff feature the following players: Chris Archer, Tyler Clippard, Danny Duffy, Sam Dyson, Michael Givens, Luke Gregerson, Nate Jones, Jake McGee, Andrew Miller, Pat Neshek, Tanner Roark, David Robertson, and Marcus Stroman. The catching group is now full of retired players. Buster Posey was the leader of the group. He was followed by Jonathan Lucroy and A.J. Ellis. Posey and Lucroy would see a majority at the playing time, but A.J. Ellis would be a solid addition to the catching depth. The position group Leyland put together for the infield is definitely a great one. A group would be headlined by the likes of Paul Goldschmidt, Eric Hosmer, Daniel Murphy, Ian Kinsler, Nolan Arenado, Matt Carpenter, Alex Bregman, and Brandon Crawford. It is crazy to see that now a bunch of those guys are retired or nearing that stage of their careers. And now the outfield group was probably one of the most fun I can remember. Adam Jones, Andrew McCutchen, Giancarlo Stanton, and Christian Yelich were the core four that Jim Leyland put together for the tournament. Other countries were able to build solid outfields, but the United States was one of the favorite groupings of the tournament. Also to note, the Americans would play their first round action at the home of the Miami Marlins, which at the time was the home of Stanton and Yelich. Next up was a group of 6 pitchers that made up the designated pitcher pool. These were guys that weren't officially on the team, but could make appearances to help with innings. Brett Cecil, Michael Fulmer, Sonny Gray, J.A. Happ, Drew Smiley, and Alex Wilson made up this group. Overall, Jim Leyland was able to put together the amazing roster that it was. Yes, the 2023 edition of the team had a lot more star power with the additions of Mike Trout and Trey Turner, but this squad, in my opinion, was on a level of its own. The United States would find themselves playing their first round games at Marlins Park in Miami, Florida. They would be placed in Pool C, where they shared the group with the likes of Canada, a World Baseball Classic newcomer in Colombia, an international powerhouse, and a tournament favorite in the Dominican Republic. The teams that would finish in the top 2 spots would earn the right to go to Petco Park in San Diego for round 2. The first opponent that the Americans would face would be the tournament newcomer in Colombia. Many thought that this game would be an easy win for the Americans, but that was not the case. MLB starter Jose Quintana was able to no-hit the Americans through 6 innings of work. However, Chris Archer was able to no-hit Colombia for 4. A game in which many expected the Americans' bats to explode in their opener, they went silent. Colombia was able to grab a 2-0 lead in the 5th inning off of a double. However, the Americans were soon able to tie it right back up. Brandon Crawford would single in the 6th, and a small rally would follow. Ian Kinsler would also single, and Adam Jones would double to bring in the first run. A wild pitch would follow to score Kinsler. The game was then tied 2-2. The World Baseball Classic would then see a surprise extra innings battle between the two teams. However, only the 10th inning would be needed. Adam Jones would bring the winning run home as the Marlins outfielder Christian Yelich came in to score. The Americans would start 1-0, and Adam Jones would begin his great tournament with a walk-off. Next up was the battle of the heavyweights in the USA and the Dominican Republic. Both teams being 1-0 in group play, and a win for either side would be more than able to clinch them a spot in the second round. The Dominicans had a team headlined by MLB stars. Manny Machado, Robinson Cano, Jose Bautista, Starling Marte, and Nelson Cruz were just some of the amazing players on that side. In this game, the Americans got off to a stronger start than the last. Marcus Stroman was the starter for the Americans and threw 4 2/3 innings of scoreless baseball. All during this, Team USA was able to attack Edinson Volquez of the DR. Ian Kinsler would get on base and score, while Adam Jones was able to get on base on a Starling Marte fielding error. Christian Yelich would follow with a single to give the Americans an early 2-0 lead. In the next inning, Brandon Crawford would bring in Paul Goldschmidt with a single to make it 3-0. A few innings later, hometown hero Giancarlo Stanton would add 2 more runs with a double to make it 5-0 USA. As the Americans appeared to be running away with this game, the Dominicans finally started to click. Manny Machado would begin the momentum shift with a solo shot to get them on the board. Tanner Roark seemed to get rattled after and would walk both Robinson Cano and Jose Bautista back-to-back. Carlos Santana would then double to make it 5-2. In the 7th inning, Wellington Castillo would double in Starling Marte to make it 5-3, and then in a dramatic 8th inning would ensue. Andrew Miller would enter the game in relief and immediately hit Jose Bautista with a pitch. The power-hitting Nelson Cruz would then hit a go-ahead 2-run home run to give the Dominicans their first lead of the night. Starling Marte would also hit one over the fence against Miller to make it 7-5. This is all the Dominicans would need, as the Americans were able to produce no answer late in the game. In what was a record-breaking game at Marlins Park attendance-wise, the DR would clinch a spot in the next round of the tournament, while the USA had a must-win situation against Canada. Team USA now had a must-win game against Canada up next, and they were able to do just that. The USA would hit their first home runs of the tournament as both Buster Posey and Nolan Arenado went yard at Marlins Park. Other guys like Eric Hosmer had big moments in this game as well. Team USA would take this one against Canada with the final score of 8-0. They would go on to the next stage with the Dominican Republic, who in their own way survived their own scare against Colombia, who as well forced them into extra innings to close out group play. Petco Park was the home for a very memorable and competitive second round of the group stages. The top two teams would head to Dodger Stadiums to clash with the other top two of the other group. The group Team USA found themselves in was stacked. Puerto Rico, Venezuela, and their rival the Dominican Republic would be featured in this group. This was probably the stage that received the most hype of the tournament. Honestly, any team would have been able to move on. The first matchup for Team USA was against Venezuela. Venezuela had a start headlined by King Felix of the Seattle Mariners in this game, where he would throw 5 shutout innings. Drew Smiley for the Team USA also put up a strong outing. Ender Inciarte would start the scoring for Venezuela with a sacrifice fly to make it 1-0. The game would stay 1-0 until the 7th inning, where Rougned Odor would make it 2-0 with a solo home run. The Americans were in a late 2-0 deficit in what would call a must-win with how tough the group was. Losing the first game of action would not be good. In the bottom of the 7th inning, Team USA was able to get one back after Jonathan Lucroy's sacrifice fly. Heading into the 8th, the Americans still needed more, and they would get just that. Adam Jones would give the Americans a game-tying home run, and Eric Hosmer would soon after that hit a go-ahead 2-run shot to make it 4-2. The Americans would go on to take this game and start 1-0. Another interesting note that developed before the game also, the DR lost their opener to Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico would be the next test for the USA. If they won this game, things would look way better heading into the rematch against the DR. Puerto Rico was able to start the game off hot with a 4-run first inning, as the first 6 Puerto Rican hitters would all get singles off of Marcus Stroman. The Americans then proceeded to slowly chip away. Nolan Arenado would be brought in by Eric Hosmer and would later get solo home runs from Buster Posey and the hometown guy again, Adam Jones, who was having a great run. Puerto Rico was able to get the lead back to 6-3, but that wouldn't be it for the game. The Americans were able to make it a game again as Brandon Crawford tripled to make it 6-5. However, this would be the final. Puerto Rico would clinch a spot in the semifinals, and Team USA would have to get revenge in a rematch against the Dominicans. The DR was able to shut out and eliminate Venezuela. Heading into the final matchup, both the DR and USA were sitting at 1-1. A win for either side would get them the second spot in the group and clinch a spot at Dodger Stadium for the semis. This game would go down as the most dramatic of the tournament. The semifinals heading into this game were just awaiting the winner. Puerto Rico had a match set against the Netherlands, who were a surprise of the tournament, and their undefeated counterpart, Team Japan, was awaiting the winner of the USA and the DR. Team DR was able to start off quickly in round 2. Robinson Cano and Carlos Santana were able to make it 2-0 with RBIs of their own. After one inning, the DR already found themselves in complete control. In the 3rd inning, the Americans were able to tie it right back up. Ian Kinsler and Christian Yelich were able to bring in 2 runs and tie it up themselves. In the next inning, Irvin Santana was tested. Brandon Crawford would get a 2-out single in which Giancarlo Stanton was finally able to connect with a ball and hit a laser shot into the supply building at Petco. It was now 4-2 USA, and the crowd was rocking. In the 7th inning, a magical moment would then happen. Orioles star Manny Machado, who sparked the comeback in round 1, would hit a long ball deep into center field. As it was heading over the wall, his Orioles teammate Adam Jones, who was on fire in this round of the tournament, would leap to make the robbery. As Machado was rounding first, he would acknowledge Jones by tipping his cap to him. This would be a key moment, however, as after this happened, Robinson Cano hit a solo shot himself. If that robbery doesn't happen, it's a tie game. The USA would get some more support in the 8th as Andrew McCutchen would double in a pair to build the lead to 3. Sam Dyson and Luke Gregerson would come out of the pen to absolutely shut down the last 8 hitters for the DR. The Americans would take the all-important rematch and clinch the last spot remaining in the World Baseball Classic semifinals. They then had a date with the undefeated powerhouse in Team Japan. The United States found themselves matched up with international baseball rival Team Japan. This game would go down as one of the tightest for the team of them all. Japan also being undefeated was a tough test. The scoring would start in the fourth as Pittsburgh Pirates star Andrew McCutchen would single in Christian Yelich to give his team a 1-0 lead. Both pitching staffs pitched excellent in this game. Both teams were being struck out all game long. In the bottom of the sixth inning, Japan was finally able to respond, tying the game with a Ryosuke Kikuchi solo shot. The game would end up being 1-1 until the top of the eighth. In the eighth inning, Adam Jones would hit a grounder to third baseman Nobuhiro Matsada, where he would bobble the play. Brandon Crawford would score easily on this play and give the Americans a 2-1 lead. This is all Team USA would need. In a dramatic game with great pitching, Team USA would beat their rival and powerhouse Team Japan. However, waiting around the corner in the championship was another rival, this being the team that just defeated them in round 2 and was still undefeated going into the championship game. This would be the Puerto Ricans coming off of a win against the Netherlands. In the championship, the starters were Marcus Stroman and Seth Lugo, the same two pitchers who faced off in the second round where Puerto Rico took the win. However, this game was very different. This was by far the most dominant game for the Americans since their win against Canada in round 1. Team USA would tally 13 hits in the hit column, including an Ian Kinsler home run. This would lead them to an 8-0 win over the undefeated Puerto Rican side. After the game, starting pitcher of Team USA Marcus Stroman will be named the tournament's MVP. This would go down as the first World Baseball Classic win for the USA in what will become an amazing run. The story of this tournament for the Americans has to be their resiliency. They took down both the DR and Puerto Rico after tough losses to each. One of those wins being to clinch a spot in the semis and the other to win the whole tournament. This American team will always go down in history within U.S. baseball as the first to win the World Baseball Classic. Overall, this tournament run was honestly a very fun one, and I'm glad I decided to take a look back onto this. The World Baseball Classic is always a great event, and I honestly hope the popularity of it will continue to grow even more. As always, thank you all for watching this video. This was a longer one than I usually will make, so if you've made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you aren't already subscribed to the channel, make sure to do so, like the video, and comment some of your favorite moments from this World Baseball Classic tournament or any other versions of the WBC. Thank you all for watching, and have a great one.